Welcome back. Game number 1. In the best of 3 here for the Matcherino Cup. This is the second Matcherino Weekly. I will tell you guys, last week we raised a little over $500. And what the best part of that was knowing that the players were getting all the money for it. I don't know if we'll hit that crazy amount again for a weekly cup, but we're already up to $137. So if people are willing to donate a couple of bucks here and there, or use the coupon codes to generate $1 out of nowhere for the players, I would be super stoked with that. Because ZombieRub and I, we don't get any cut of this. Matcherino, they waive their normal fees, so the players get 100% of the payouts. We want to raise as much money as possible for today's players. So make sure to head over to that Matcherino page, type !Matcherino in chat, and help us grow that prize pool as best we can. Spotting here, though, in the bottom right side of Lirlac. He's going to be, for the first time ever, not my favorite in a TVP. My Insanity's Botvinnik.
In the bottom left, as the blue Protoss, it is Neeb.
Reppin' on fire. Let's not forget about that.
Of course, yeah.
So he scouts early and he locks out with the first scout on the probe, so it gets to be a little annoying, pulls a couple of SCVs. I will tell you, I feel like there's so little that can tilt me more than having to do this when it comes to an early game thing. But
oh yeah, for sure. So what's odd is, I've been playing a bit of Brood War, and this actually the one better thing about dumb AI in Brood War is that it's really hard to kill an SCV that's on a building. Where in StarCraft 2 it's so easy, like if you just attack, move, like it'll figure out like, oh, you mean for me to attack the SCV? Okay. God, I think it's Terran sometimes. Tilt-inducing, I swear. It is going to be a regular old, command center after barracks, but what follows this is what's interesting, because we're always going to talk about Botvinnik's tank pushes. Lirlac Crest, good for tank pushes. Horizontal spawns, also good for tank pushes. That's usually against Zerg, but Botvinnik, just in general, with his powerful versus Protoss tank pushes, is what I would anticipate coming out here. I'm not sure if Neeb knows this. Of course, Neeb, an NA player, and if they're going to play a different server, they're probably going to try and play on the Korean server, not the European one, and we are on the European one.
Right, so I guess that's kind of the funny thing. I just not considered going into this because it's Neeb. Is like, this is actually, NA coming to EU, so a bit of a home field advantage for Botvinnik. But to elaborate just a little bit on my opening remarks for this game, like, Botvinnik really has been looking so good versus Protoss players. I mean, as you cited, like, it doesn't matter what servers, like, Botvinnik just plays well in this matchup with really cool, very aggressive pushes. Mm-hmm. But Neeb has been the one guy to set Protoss apart from most. Like in a world where Protoss can't seem to win anything, Neeb's been able to get wins and victories and look good doing so. Like to the point where we're referencing his Warp Prism play, not SOS's or things like this,
Sure.
So sure. I mean, I've been liking Neeb a lot, which is why I think I give it a bit of favoritism going into this.
He's certainly the best Protoss that NA has to offer, and he was one of the few that was making, like, wins in general. Then Koreans really started to make it like, okay, it looks pretty even over there. Europeans have now caught up, I guess you could say, with this recent Shanghai tournament, but...
Oh, yeah, Hearthstone? Hell yeah.
Yeah, they've been looking pretty good. But I mostly brought up the European server thing, not because I'm worried that Neeb will have, like, a severe mismicro because of lag or anything like that. So that I'm not so worried about. But more that I don't know if he knows Botvinnik's style. I don't know if Neeb like subscribes to BaseTradeTV and gets like the replays or even watches. I assume he watches sometimes just when to catch games, basically, as we're always on almost. But to actually know that Botvinnik has a certain style or know how to deal against it, because that's been one of the problems I feel is that Protoss is having a little bit of a tough time versus Terran. But also, like, specifically against a couple of styles of Terran, like the Liberator style, or the tank push style, or the multiple drop style. There's so many styles that consist of most of the same units for Terran that some Protoss have trouble with. Now, this is a very early tank push, certainly not what I was anticipating when I was talking about it. I
mean, yeah, but he does these tank pushes, but it comes off the back end of having like 18 Marines good to go and 2 tanks type things. So this first one outranges that pylon quite nicely. Mothership Core can't get in here to do anything. The Stalkers can't advance forward. They already lost a lot of health. Neeb's kind of forced to wait for that Immortal to finish up. So while there's not enough damage here, I think, to really kill a Nexus, it's denying mining, which is quite a bit of damage in and of itself.
Yeah. And it looks like he's still going to follow up with that tank push we were thinking of, going to go up to 5 barracks probably, and continue making those tanks.
I like that he pulls back.
Yeah, he has to be careful about losing an army, though, because a counter push of Blink Stalkers, and you see that many Stalkers, and you know they're probably going to get Blink with that. You do need those tanks to defend while you still get up your upgrades. This is the biggest thing that he pushed back, was his stim and combat shields.
Quick shout out to Any Day Now, please, for the 18-month resub as well. Thank you for hitting us up during some of the action. But this is... I'm surprised he got spooked by this. I mean, Botvinnik didn't really see too much other than the fact that there was no third, and that's... I feel this early not that alarming, but he did fall back very quickly. Blink is in play. His main's not in danger, but the tanks are... they're vulnerable, we'll say. The supply block's going to sting a bit, too, without that medevac production coming out. Really, actually, no depot started just now. That's gonna hurt Botvinnik a lot, actually.
That was a pretty severe one right there. And with that second tank not siege, that almost looks scary, but Neeb just immediately backs out, doesn't want to tango. He doesn't really have sight on what's coming out behind it. He doesn't have an observer on the high ground right now. There it goes through the main base. Doesn't really want to be scouted, but wants to see is there a third.
Yeah.
And he actually would, I think, see the 2 extra barracks to the left. Bye, observer.
It's worth noting that Botvinnik has been playing... Like, we see him go for thirds, but it's usually at the sacrifice of getting a lot of production up early, and that's those pushes we were talking about. So it's weird to classify this, because Botvinnik always opens up with what kind of looks like 2 base all-ins, right? Tanks and marine pushes, but then usually expands like right behind it. So it's kind of like it is this 2 base build up to a point, then there's the cutoff. Yeah.
Well, it's an all-in, and in the case that like if you don't do damage, you're in a lot of trouble. But it seems like it, not always, but almost always does enough damage to warrant trying to play a macro game behind it, even if everything else is kind of falling behind.
Yeah.
Mostly those upgrades, like you start just falling behind on the like 1-1-2-2 type deal. Botvinnik is ready. His stim, combat shields, +1 all done. He's gonna reinforce with liberators. He's got 5 tanks, just not enough medevacs to carry them all around. And Neeb is actually, he's going to have some trouble with this, but I already like this. Taking the fight on the bottom of the ramp as opposed to getting choked in near natural is usually better for the Protoss.
Here's the problem. We got more depth warping in. There's not that many stalkers in the first place. These liberators, like if he goes in right now with the tanks and loses everything, that really sucks, but the liberators that paired up with this are going to be devastating, and I would argue almost not possible to deal with. Tanks being shuffled around really nicely here to Botvinnik, that Immortal driving a lot of them back. The Marines have been chewed through, however. And if he just focuses down the last couple of stalkers, these liberators will reign supreme.
Oh, you're right about that. It's nice blink forward to that last stalker, and he does move everything else out of the liberating zone. And Neeb still took a much better fight. Like it was a worry with that lack of anti-air, but Neeb had a good composition. More importantly, he wasn't scared. He pushed against Botvinnik, which was really important, and just worked out well.
I felt like if Botvinnik had waited the extra few seconds to get the liberators out, that may have changed the course of battle when it came to timings, but at the same time I could understand wanting to move out. He's still playing on 2 bases. It is that all-in situation still, and the longer you wait knowing your opponent already took a third, the worse it's going to get for you as time goes on.
Yeah. It certainly is a problem. At the very least, you would hope to get up against the Ridge and the Natural and deny mining, at least half of the mining, and force them to really start to sweat, as they try and figure out how to break a siege line. But that didn't happen. He was caught in the middle of the map. So Neeb should be feeling on top of the world right now. Like he should win this game, but he still has a secondary all-in to really worry about here. It's going to have +1/1 this time, so he's actually going to be a little bit behind on those upgrades. He's not going to have Storm if Botvinnik pushes out right now, so he might just wait in his natural for that.
Stimming on top is always a little bit frustrating. You don't have Marauders. Marines certainly have the damage, but they just can't keep up with Stalkers a lot of the time, especially with that Blink. Tank's not wanting to be dropped, but we do have that Liberator setting up here at the third, so Neeb going to have this shut down at 9 for a small amount of time. Too busy perhaps Micro in the middle of the map to really pay attention back there, so don't blame him too much for the time being. He does lose about 3 probes before he gets pulled away. The Immortal count's actually grown up quite a bit too from that last engagement. Let's not forget, not a lot of Immortals. In fact, I don't think any Immortals actually died before. Yeah, so living true to their name, they did survive that fight. The Archon's going to push forward first, but they got to be careful. Those Liberators make this a really tense fighting zone. Snipes off one of the Archons right away.
Yeah, that did not last a long time.
No, it certainly did not. Liberators, of course, if they unsiege, you're going to give Neeb time to get up here on the front lines. He's going to send the Adepts in, but I think this is more for scouting. This would be a really weird choice to engage here, but yeah. Getting really scared how long you let those go for. We got a donation and Eki resubbing. We'll get those donations right out in a moment because we are possibly going to have a fight going down here soon. Loses some Marines to the north of the medevac. That's not too nice, but the tanks do kill a couple of stalkers, so not for free.
This is a position Botvinnik was hoping he gets in the beginning with that first push, so something a little more pressure for Neeb to deal with. Yeah. But it's still not ideal. Like, he still is going to be concaved on. You want to be up against that ridge or some type of ridge. So this is still going to go really well for Neeb. Yeah, tanks are all going to die here. And the medevacs, they might be able to escape. Liberators, Liberators do go down eventually.
He almost takes out all the stalkers, though. Once again, those Liberators should be what keeps Botvinnik from dying to this counterattack.
The Liberator goes down. The Adepts do shade on top of the Marines, but perhaps not anticipating the mass amount of reinforcements. I mean, if you're only building Marines, you're going to be able to collect quite a few in the back lines, and he will not be pushing forward. Neeb takes the 4th base in an offensive position, which is very interesting.
I actually don't dislike this. This is where the point of contention has been going around, and the last thing you want to do is spread this out so far that you're constantly splitting your army to defend against drops elsewhere on the map, instead of consolidating where you know the fight's already taking place. Is it more vulnerable here? Probably, sure, but it also guarantees that your army's going to be right where you want it to be and not halfway across the map.
Yeah.
Oh, it decides to cancel it, though, so screw it. Not going to take that risk and decides to go for the other one. I guess the other part of this is Botvinnik really has not been dropping anything. It's been big frontal pushes. And for that reason, taking this base probably a little bit more safe and sound. But
I think he might have thought he was more ahead than he was. But seeing the 3rd base, seeing the army reinforcements that were still available, he did. I looked a little bit surprised. But there's going to be a drop, just a single one. And Neeb has not been. He didn't have to deal with this, so is not totally prepared. It's a Mothership Core. She's patrolling, so there should be a photon overcharge.
All right. I guess your mom is vacuuming today, by the way.
I think.
Yeah. All right. By the way, quick shout out on that donation earlier. $10 coming in from Drainar, and he says your hard work is appreciated, and he signs it with a bit of an X. So I'm assuming that's a bit of a kiss, like a XOXO,
Aww.
But no hugs, just kisses.
Thanks.
And then Eki reached up for 2 goddamn years while that went on too. So thank you both.
Woohoo.
But as things continue to get a little bit scary for Neeb, I think Botvinnik, I think one of the things he's going to be worrying about now is this upgrade disparity. Like, his 2-2's coming up, sure, but Neeb's already on level 2 armor upgrades. And this is really important because it has been so Marine heavy. Now that we're finally having Marauders entered in with more Liberators, okay, Botvinnik maybe has a better chance. But when it was just pure Marines, between like the odd Storm and +2 armor, Marines were just going to go ham.
We have a Warp Prism going off to the right side. We have the main base lifted up for Botvinnik going towards a 4th. And Botvinnik still has a very strong army and has kept that tank count for the most parts, but is more about reinforcing with the Liberators now. Doesn't protect that 4th base that I was talking about, though. That's a problem.
I'm surprised, too. Like, this was something where he was so held up with the army, he knew where it was. Why send that out? The command center is just going to burn. That was his main command center, too, by the way. Warp Prism, speaking of the main, also sneaks into the main. Lots of Adepts going on up here.
That is so many Adepts. I mean all the Marines that have come back and deal with this.
I like this, though. Like, this is something we've seen a lot of Protoss players kind of discussing, where, okay, you can't deal with a Terran player who's rooted in place, who's got those Liberators and tanks up, so what do? You go around them. Now, the Adepts do get cleaned up. The Marines take care of this pretty quickly, but, again, it's not something where he's going to be breaking the front lines anytime soon, but he's getting himself the time to. 2 Stargates come down. Fleet Beacon on the way as well.
Yeah. That Fleet Beacon is an unfortunate necessity for Neeb, who would really already have won the game, pushed past. But it's not just siege tanks, it's siege liberators, and they do turtle on 3 base quite effectively. He wanted to deny a 4th, and he was able to deny a 4th, so Neeb's been doing this game pretty well. And now going up to that Stargate should be the closer.
Yeah,
but Botvinnik is got that army, and eventually I think he's just going to be too... he doesn't have to... He has to push, but he's actually pushed into. Storm's coming down, too.
Yeah, I don't blame him. These Liberators getting some fantastic shots. Marine's going to tear through the Adepts. Oh, my God. Melting them like butter.
Whoa,
now that all the Storms have been used, the Bio might push out, and Botvinnik suddenly up double the supply.
Questionable. I don't know.
I don't believe it's a choke. That's where you want to Storm. That's where you want to find Bio. But fighting in the Liberators, that's where the questions get raised. Like, why?
Yeah, and he held position not just on his Stalkers, but on his Immortals, too. So they were just sitting in the Liberation Zone. Did Neeb just throw this game? He almost had the Stargate to take care of those Liberators, but looked for the Storms first.
Oh,
a couple backup Storms are going to make that army too weak to push up.
There's no medevacs. There's the one medevac here is just for shuffling units. He can't actually heal. Storms are going to eradicate the army. We asked if Neeb just threw the game. Did Botvinnik perhaps just throw the game? I mean, he was forced to kind of all in, losing his main command center like that, but he doesn't have the composition appropriate to go forward. He's not producing medevacs. He's got the money. I don't know why he's not doing it.
Neeb bothered to feed back the 2 medevacs that were available, and then of course one of them died. So that was pretty important, and Neeb noticed it. The stim to the left, to the top rather, to kill the 4th base just makes them even easier to kill, easier to get one-shot by a couple of these units.
I mean, an Archon Blast is going to kill so many Marines. Again, I'm looking at like 1,100, 1,500 gas. I mean, Botvinnik is probably a little bit stressed right now, and I'm not going to be trying to criticize this too hard, but you've been sitting on this much money, you're not supply blocked. Those medevacs should have been out here like 3 or 4 rounds ago.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
There's definitely mistakes that have been made from both players, but I think Botvinnik's the one who's in a bit more grave danger. He was up double the supply, and now he's behind once again. Storm's going to take out so much of this biome despite having such a fantastic fight.
Good game.
GG gets called. Neeb will take the first game in this best of 3. That was really... I mean, like to really drive this home, it's not like Neeb was sitting there being bad. Like, he was poised and positioned, and he wasn't trying to toy with his opponent or play super greedy behind it. He just really could not push past those Liberators. So, yes, that was a bad fight, but it's also really good that he didn't do that earlier either. Like, at no point did Neeb just kind of willy-nilly move in.
It was super scary, though, and I'm sure he's actually played a couple of games where Liberators ended up taking back a game.
Oh, for sure. I think at this point, with how much we hear from Protoss, like, that's definitely happened.
Yeah, he's probably getting like flashbacks. That army.
What do we have for game 2 coming up?
Dusk Towers.
All right, and checking the prize pool, we're up to $144.50. So again, if you guys are really enjoying the tournament today, I hope we'll see some people throwing a couple of bucks here and there for the players. Obviously, I'm sure some of you are going to be holding your cash out a little bit to see what the matches look like as we go into it. But with players like Super, Guru, Bly, Masa, Botvinnik, and Neeb, and many others, I hope we can raise a really big prize pool for them. But we're going to Dusk Towers, and we'll see you guys here in a sec. All right, welcome back to game number 2. Of the Matcherino Weekly number 2, Electric Boogaloo. By the way, shout out to Oli Moly, because all of the Matcherino bracket names have the stupidest but greatest titles. You guys should definitely make sure to read them going forward. But, that being said, before we introduce either of these players, I just want to say, like, game number 1 are kind of like, or at least my torn feelings between the two players, I feel was really represented well in that first game, where you've got Botvinnik, who's a good enough player to play a strong game versus Protoss. Almost looked like he was going to win, but Neeb took it back, contained him. The Botvinnik looks like he's good again. Then takes it back. Like, I mean, that was the not the most intense back and forth we've ever seen, but it was a back and forth game, and I'm really hoping for more of that here in game number 2. Spawning in the bottom left, it is going to be the Yellow Terran player, My Insanity's Botvinnik.
In the top right, as the Blue Protoss, he is Neeb.
So I think it's pretty safe to say we can kind of hone down some of the problems for Botvinnik last game. Really did come down to his macro towards the end of it. Combination decision with that fourth base command center going down, and the was that 1k bank and no medevacs, no liberators. I guarantee you towards the end of that game, he was probably very tunnel vision and focused, said, I took this good engagement and this is my time. John Cena styles, and just really, I think that hurt him most. If he had played a little more calm, took a deep breath, sat back, I think he could have actually won that game off of that position.
Just in general, the fact that he was pushed back twice, not super easily, but confidently by Neeb, and still ended up being a very, very long, close game. Also to the test to just the power of both players, but also the power specifically of Botvinnik's 2-base tank pushes.
Yeah.
That eventually do macro out, which he should be doing here again on Dusk Towers. This is another map that he likes to do it on.
And I see chat bringing up a lot of context regarding Marauders, and I just want to point out, like, there were a couple Marauders in the army, but truth be told, because he's got the tanks, there's not as much of a necessity on the Marauders. Like, there's no one who's ever going to argue don't have Marauders, right? They're good against Adepts, they're good against Stalkers, you name it. But I actually kind of like that he didn't have that many, because the Archons and the Immortals would have torn them to shreds.
I'm going to say this, but everyone's going to be like, but he had a bank, but it's also just, you can get twice as many Marines, you know, like, there is something to be said for that. It's not only like twice as many with minerals, but twice as much production too. Even swapping over those tech labs that built the combat shields and stim might have been a good solution for Botvinnik. I don't think he did. He was producing, I think, 7 Marines at a time. But the only benefit the Marauders would have added was potentially slowing a stalker down at a key moment while running away from a Liberator. But you're right, like the tanks really do cover that part, and just having as much fodder for the tanks in the form of Marines is probably better.
I mean, we watched those Adepts melt like butter. They transferred on top of the tanks, all the Marines were in the back, like, easy peasy. Marines have damage, period.
I guess the other argument could be that they survive storms, which... I mean, if we're going to see the 2 tank push here, we've seen it plenty of times before. Like, Mana tried to get to Storm before it happened, and sometimes it would be the key, and sometimes it wouldn't be. And Marauders can definitely tank a couple of Storms. But again, I think that it's Botvinnik's all about trying to get as much as possible with the income that he has, and that's going to be the best bang for your buck is going to be Marines. That's why everyone cries OP for them.
Well, actually, the best bang for your buck's going to be Charlene down by... No, I'm
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just, for me, I liked so much of what happened. It's really hard to be like, okay, something was clearly done wrong, right? But either way, we're gonna have that medevac come out. Now, it's worth noting we did watch Botvinnik get fantastic hits with this last time, but I do have to imagine all of his luck was used up against Jage in that series. Because as good as bad as Neeb may be, there's just no way he gets 21 Widowmine hits once again.
I mean, it can happen, but I don't think so either. It really was, you said it, if he had just continued mining, would have taken less damage on those probes. Neeb is in the same position, though. He has like Stalker's ready. In fact, Stalker's ready on the front here for his 3rd, too. Stalker's might... Okay, he's going to target fire the mine on the probes.
6 isn't bad. And the other one's in a position to deny a 3rd. So... not bad for damage. It sucks that he lost the medevac, though, and that's going to be hard to actually make up the difference for.
Yeah, that does suck. So 6 probes, a medevac, the Widowmines are going to die here. Maybe that second Widowmine gets a surprise hit if Neeb forgets.
Just scan right now and take out the observer.
Yeah, right? Yeah, he did see that get burrowed, so it gets cleaned up, too. Bit of bad news for the brackets. Looks like Bly did forfeit.
Oh, no. Why?
I don't know.
Oh, rest in peace. I love Bly.
Yeah. So that's a little unfortunate. So we're going to have a big jump forward for whoever wins between Ruff and Tails.
Yeah. We do plan to cast both of the semifinals matches today, guys. So we'll see 2 best-of-3s and a best-of-5 guaranteed after this. But looks like we might just have a bit of a short bracket if that's the case. A couple of no-shows, a couple of walkovers. Kind of sucks, but it is the life of esports. Now, there's a ton of Marauders this time, so it's kind of funny. Like, maybe Botvinnik says, you know what? Marauders would have been better. Twitch chat was right.
Well,
but I would argue that I really like his style where he goes massive amounts of units. Like, you talked about fodder, but I also just look at Marines as a giant firing squad. If anything gets in range of them, they're probably going to die. But Marauders are good against Stalkers, and there's no question about that.
I mean, Neeb is probably already, like, honing in on this, but the fact that there are Marauders and now his observer is getting into the main base, he'll know that there's no tanks. Especially because if there were tanks, there'd be one firing at his Link Stalkers right now whenever they got in range. So it is going to be a styling difference. I said that Botvinnik does like using the 2-base tank push on this map, and that isn't incorrect. He does do it a lot on this map. Certainly won him some games in the last couple of European Cups, but he is changing his style to actually more like Heart of the Swarm. So we should be seeing a lot more like frontal pushes with a very strong army, maybe a few drops, depending on how he wants to test Neeb's defense, harassment defense, but he's also going for a 3rd base on location. Neeb has a faster 3rd base, as most Protosses want to have. Like, how crazy is that difference now? Legacy of the Void to Heart of the Swarm. They're the ones that want the faster expansion.
Heart of the Swarm, you didn't even want to expand, man. 2 bases for life.
2 bases forever. Like
2-base Blink exactly. Stalker or die trying. But okay, this is still a little bit scary though. Despite how good Marauders may be, it's worth noting that this is still, there's going to be Immortals, there's going to be Force Fields, there's going to be Guardian Shields. It's not going to be an easy move in here for Botvinnik. But I do like that his start comes out at a better timing. Like last game, it really was teeter-tottering on that phrase of all in. It took him so long to get his 3rd down. Of course he was going to go behind later on. The downside, though, is he's not going to have nearly as good of production this time around as he did before. Again, with the emphasis here on Marauders, you're not producing 20 Marines per cycle, you're producing like 5.
Yeah. It's a bulkier army, but it is technically going to be smaller than just pure Marine. He is going to go for a drop, a bit of a doom drop, really. I mean, that's 4 medevacs, only 3 of them are full, which looks a little bit odd.
Actually, I like this for splitting. You're going to unload on top of pylons. Sure, they're going to be overcharged, but Marauders are going to tear through the pylons pretty damn quickly. So it focuses them down about as quick as he can. 4 pylons, though.
Holy
oh,
shit.
Wow, the bio just... This is not something he should have committed to. The second that happened, he should have backed the fuck away. Full medevacs worth of units dies. Okay,
dude,
so hang on. If he had unloaded here, as someone points out, he would have only had to fight 2. He chose to fight the one spot. The one single spot. There's 4 fucking pylons.
So, like, a while ago, we were talking about someone going for mutas, and, like, we had to, like, you know, oh, make sure there's pylons in your mineral line for the mutas, and someone in chat was like, what would our Brood War forefathers say that, like, a Zerg player's afraid of pylons? That was that right there. Like
that moment, yeah.
You should have dropped them 4 pylons, clearly. Someone at Wings of Liberty would be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Okay, well, you know what? It did burn the energy of the mothership core, so there's actually not even one charge available this time.
Yeah.
We got double medevac setup over here to go in once the army responds to this. He's going to tear through the mothership core. He's going to tear through the probe line. The Nexus is probably going to get focused. Uphold style starting to snipe this. Feedback's going down on top of the medevac, so most of them already are out of energy, so not too bad as he picks up to fly away. While this goes on, though, drops in the natural, also going to catch him a little off guard, but not too off guard as there's a cannon here to defend.
This was about as good of a defense Neeb could probably have, to be honest. Like, losing that main Nexus was not ideal, obviously, as he replaces it right now, but it would have been really hard to have split your army perfectly 3 ways, because if you do that preemptively, all they do is drop for 1 big attack and you don't get to scout it, because I think Botvinnik's been doing a decent job killing these observers. Could be doing better, like, in the main here. He scans once again and just barely misses the observer.
Well, I gotta say, like, that main Nexus snipe was pretty scary. It didn't totally kill Neeb, but it did bring Botvinnik in a pretty good spot because he was losing the income war leading into that. So finally a little bit ahead. Thank you, Graphs, for showing us.
Woo! Graphs, yeah. Neeb is doing a fine enough job. Again, losing that Nexus could have been better, but that was one of the less important Nexus, and he still had enough minerals to get a 4th base down, which is a lot more important. He didn't lose a good chunk of his army. In fact, neither of them did. That was always the problem about drops for either person, is that they would try and defend, lose a big army, or the attacking player would lose an army, not do enough, and they would both, either one would have like a very low army supply, but they really, I mean, Botvinnik obviously lost a lot of the units on the ground, but saved a lot of them too, so.
I'm trying to remember, was it last night we were discussing either versus either?
No, we've never discussed this.
I swear it was yesterday we were doing this.
I mean, I was a little tipsy, but I'm pretty sure we did not.
You know what? It wasn't you. Excuse me. It was Oli Molly. We had this big debate because she was talking about or, and I was like, either or, either or. Okay, so never mind.
I wasn't that drunk. Like,
I take it back.
So paranoid.
I take it back. Sorry, you got wasted last night. All right, 5 ghosts at a time is actually kind of cool to see, but this is where the game gets a little bit weird when it comes to the dynamic of ghosts in this composition. Now, there's no denying it. EMPs are fantastic. They do instant damage. It's all the shields gone. Cool. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's not. That's up to you as the Protoss player to decide. But I do like them for their damage. However, not against Stalkers. There's a player a lot of you guys know, Happy, Empire Happy, once upon a time. His favorite composition late game TVP and HOTS was Ghost Viking en masse. And it would get destroyed by Stalkers. So the same kind of problem presents itself, but Ghosts just don't have a lot of good damage versus Stalkers. So if the Marauder count gets thinned out, it's just Ghosts on the back line, it's not going to work out well for him. But again, an EMP or 2 is never bad to have whatsoever. No one's ever going to complain about that. Meanwhile, over here, looks like Warp Prism does get picked off, so a little bit awkward for Botvinnik because he was focusing it down, but does remove the threat from play.
Yeah, this is pretty annoying. They both are going to be really worried about drops as the game goes on. Usually Terrence stops dropping and starts dropping, but both are viable options still. Not a lot of money to invest into SAC defense as it was in Heart of the Swarm. So Botvinnik, he should have, if this was Heart of the Swarm, he would have had like missile turret rings already like everywhere and sensor towers up everywhere, but only able to afford a 4th base, which is not on location yet.
So let's discuss the Tempest element here for just a moment. First off, there's no personal cloaking for the Ghosts, so they are fully in danger of being feedbacked by the Templar. But the Liberators present a problem that the Tempests are meant to deal with thanks to their range. However, because this has been such a Marauder-heavy army, normally while the Tempests fall prey to Marines, there's not actually that many Marines underneath this. So I'm wondering just how bad the Tempest will be to deal with.
We've seen that problem for sure, where it's like, oh, the Tempest are the only thing alive, but there's no Marines, so they can't die. Okay.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing we'll see that at least once here. They're very evenly matched. Obviously, they got into this point. Tempests are out. That's very important to have any amount right now, so they can start chipping away.
EMPs
not
are down.
only the Liberators, but also the Ghosts. The Ghosts try and sacrifice themselves to get all the High Templar, but end up just dying without getting everything, and that's actually bad news for the Terran.
That was kind of cool, though. Feedbacks over Storms in a lot of these situations removed like 4 medevacs already from the fight, but that's so much goddamn bio on the ground. Pushing this back very quickly. There's only about 1 Storm available for Neeb. This next is going to get focused out by this many Marauders. Oh my god.
Marauders.
Oh, they go for the probes. That's greedy. I don't know about that.
Oh, he recalls the probes.
But he also takes a portion of his army, which makes this an even worse fight to try and defend against. But Storm's coming down aplenty, and that problem persists where there's no anti-air left. All the Marines are pretty much dead. There's like 2 Marines on the ground, so he's going to kill the ground.
The recalled army had a couple of Storms that were banking up. He gets the Storm on top of the Liberators, too.
Oh, man.
And he does push back the army. It costs him his 4th. But Botvinnik's actually going to tap out.
He lost so much of his army. I think he knew it was going to be really hard to replace that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, to be fair.
that looked like a good fight for Botvinnik, but the problem we discussed absolutely presented itself. There was no bloody anti-air.
Well, okay, so that was the first problem, and then the second problem that Terrans have always done, like the Korean Terrans and the best of their prime to, like, you know, the gold level Terrans, they sacrifice all their ghosts because they see a clumped up EMP opportunity.
Yeah, they dive on in.
And they lose every single ghost, and they're like, well, at least I got the High Templars. But every good Protoss has backup High Templars everywhere. And they actually didn't EMP everything. So, I mean, it was close. There's only the correct number of storms. There wasn't like an excess, but that was pretty important to have more ghosts behind that. Anywho.
Yeah, anywho, moving on, we're going to have, sadly, Botvinnik disappear. We love him to death, but Neeb will advance on to the quarterfinals. He'll fight either Masa or Strange. Now, if it is Masa, we'll totally let these guys play it on the North American server. That's cool, that's fine. Other side of the brackets, though, Bly forfeited, so we don't know how that bracket's going to look just yet, but Guru and Super are currently playing against one another. In fact, I think they just got out of game. We are going to go to a small 2-minute commercial break, but before we do, I'd like to once again remind you guys about the Matcherino page. I don't know if all the coupons have been used up or not. I'm assuming there's still a couple floating around, so quickly to show you how this works, if you type !Matcherino in chat, it'll bring you to this page. You sign in with your Twitch account over here. You click donate over here. Use the code BTTV2. It'll generate $1. You don't pay $1. Matcherino pays $1 for you by doing this, and that's how you can add $1 to the prize pool. But some people have been generous and actually donated some of their own cash, so lots of $1 donations. But again, shout out to the top donors so far today: Brozazar, Krugison, Bad Decaf, Hoofprint, and the Optical Speed. I'd like to see some more money here, though, if possible, guys. If you're enjoying the games, hopefully you're going to find it worth it to pay these players, because top 4 people are going to get prize money from today. So up to $144 is already fantastic. Let's see if we can hit that $400 goal, though. Either way, we're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll see you guys in 2 minutes.